Parkour. 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 Tactical rock. Hi, and welcome back to Adirondack Gamecrafts. Today, I'm painting Tyranids and trying out wet blending for the first time. So grab your coffee, get over to the desk, and let's get into it. Last year, as I was perusing the local Target, I came across this Space Marine board game. Warhammer 40k is something that I had wanted to get into for a while, but really didn't know how to start. I took a look at this box and saw it was, an all-in-one board game with one Space Marine and I think 22 Tyranid models in it. All official Warhammer 40k models, and I thought, okay, this might be a great way to get into 40k. Unfortunately, the actual game, army starter boxes, kill team, combat patrols, all that kind of stuff, they're way too expensive for me. So I hung on to this and decided that it would be it. Space Marine was going to be a game that my wife and I were going to play. I was in no hurry to paint any of the models. I decided to just do other things. I did, however, paint the Space Marine, Titus, that came with it. Just because I wanted to have some fun. And I did this before I started my YouTube channel. I think he came up pretty good. But now that the YouTube channel is up and running, I wanted to take my shot at painting some Tyranids. So I've prepped 3 of them, and what I'm going to do for this video is for each one of these I'm going to try a different paint scheme. Like I said, this is just a game that my wife and I are going to play. I'm not going to be playing in any tournaments with anybody else. So in my mind, it really doesn't matter how these get painted up. They're just for me. So first, I am going to paint the official Behemoth Hive fleet colors, just to say that I did it. I'll be following as closely as I can to the color scheme that they suggest. The second one, I'm going to paint up as Hive Fleet Leviathan. And for the third, I'm going to just make my own thing up and see what I get. So let's get started. Okay, so Games Workshop recommends for batch painting Hive Behemoth to start with a base coat of Mephisto Red, and then do a wash with Carroburg Crimson, and then a dry brush with Jacaro Orange. I don't have any of those colors. So my actual paint selection is very small, a variety of brands, none full sets. So I'm going to improvise and do my best to get the correct colors on this. So what I'm starting with here is a base coat of Abomination Gore from Army Painter. Once that's on, I'm going to highlight with Vallejo Red. I did some test comparisons on a white plastic spoon, and it seems like those two colors go together really well. And they should give me a good foundation of the red fleshy bits here on the Termagant. And the armor plates are going to be black, or, blackish. Games Workshop recommends Corvus Black and Temple Guard Blue. I'll be playing around with some various things based on what I have, because, like I said, I don't have any of the paints that Games Workshop recommends, and I'm just going to do the best I can. And I think, in the end, it'll look pretty good. I don't have any speed paints or contrast paints at all, so I can't do quick, easy paint jobs for batch painting armies, which is fine because I don't have any armies to paint. I just have what I want, small bits of models from various games, and so I do paint these up a little bit more detailed than you normally would if you're batch painting an entire army. Okay, now that I've got that red base coat on, we're going to go ahead and start applying a base coat on the armor. I don't have Corvus Black, so what I've done here is I've taken Vallejo Medium Blue and Vallejo Black and did maybe a 3-to-2 mix of blue to black to get a very, very dark bluish color. And I'll be highlighting with lighter shades of blue, a little bit of gray in the end, hopefully maintaining that dark, nearly black color that we want. Maybe I'll do a video later on about if you want to paint black, don't use black. If you want to paint white, don't use white. I've seen a bunch of those videos and they're pretty handy. So as you can see, I was a little sloppy with the red here and there because it needed to get into all kinds of really weird places. And it's okay to be sloppy with that very first coat of color you're putting on, because you can always cover it up with other colors that you're going to be putting on later, especially if you get sloppy over places where, you're going to be putting on darker colors. That's okay. Try to be a little bit more steady when you're putting on that first coat near where you're going to be putting on lighter colors. Like here, on the leg and on the arm. I'm going to be putting lighter colors into kind of highlight those types of areas, things like that. And yep, so I'm going to finish up putting on this mix of color. I think it looks okay. Alright, so we've got the armor base coat down. Perfect. Now the next bit I'm going to do is, the hooves, the spikes, and the claws, and parts of the weapon. And what I'm going to do for this is I'm going to use some of this Tamiya dark green. It's kind of an olive green color. Tamiya paints come in glass jars, and I prefer dropper bottles, so I bought some of these empty Army Painter dropper bottles and some ball bearings so that, you can shake them up. So I'm going to try that. And what I do when I'm mixing paints, because I have so little of a variety of paints, is I do a lot of mixing. So what I do is I take plastic spoons and apply some primer to the spoon, then test the colors on here. And this was my test for the red. What I wanted to use for the red, and that's my test for the armor. I decided not to go with this color because it wasn't quite what I was looking for. So I did that for the green. This is that straight Tamiya green. And this is that green with just a little bit of Reaper Bones Candlelight Yellow. I put a teeny touch of yellow in there. And that is the color I want, and that's the color that I'm going to paint the horns of our termagant. So let's get started on that. I already have the color pre-mixed. I just need to load my brush, and I can get started. Okay, so we've got all the green on the hooves, the claws, and I added some yellow in on the legs and the arms, these little spots, a little bit on the weapon, and these bits that look like the armor bits. I used the black color that I already had. So the last things I need to do are the mouth, the tongue, and the little tube thing here that comes off the weapon, and it looks like it attaches into the arm. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the teeth, and I'm going to be using this Reaper Bones Desert Sand as the base coat. And then for the tongue and that tube that comes off the gun, I am going to use Pro Acryl Magenta as the base coat. So that's it. The first termagant is done, and I'm satisfied with it as a perfectly tabletop ready piece. I'm going to do the bases after I get all three done, so I can do all three bases at once. So we'll get to that at the end of the video, but I'm satisfied with this for now. One thing that I did not like painting this was a whole lot of unavailable space underneath. I had a really hard time getting underneath because this model is so thin and it has so many appendages. It's hard to get in there. So what I'm going to try to do for the other two is to disassemble them. These were push fit, they're not glued together. So I'm just gonna try and take them apart. See what happens. I think that'll be easier. So I'm gonna go grab some tools and try to rip these things apart. Okay, so getting this apart was a lot easier than I expected, which was great. So again, I'm saving the base for the end. I'm not going to worry about that right now. I'm not even going to use my little holder because what I've got here is I've taken these stick alligator clips. I'm going to use these to hold the pieces, and Most of them have some sort of peg that I can clip onto. And once we're all set with that, I'll just use a little piece of florist foam and stick it right in there to hold them. This one didn't have anywhere that I could grab with one of those alligator clips, so I just jammed a toothpick into one of the holes, and that should be good enough to hold that guy. So let's review what colors we're going to use for the Leviathan. The Leviathan color scheme's official website says for batch painting to use Wraithbone on the fleshy bits, and lucky for me, I've got Wraithbone, so that's good. And then Magos Purple as the base coat for the armor bits. I don't have that. The closest I can find is Xerios Purple. I've got that one, so we'll see how that goes. Should work all right, I think. And then for highlights on the armor, they say Nagaroth Knight. I don't have that. The closest I can think is Vallejo model color Blue Violet. And then they say to use Abaddon Black for the hooves. I don't have that either, but model color straight up black should work. And then for doing highlights, they suggest Warp Fiend Gray over the armor. I don't have that one either, but I think model color neutral gray will work. And then the Thunderhawk Blues for the hooves. That's a real oddball color. I had nothing even close, so I'm going to have to mix a color again. So, getting some Wraithbone on here now. I loaded up the brush, and I'm just starting to paint the fleshy parts. You can be sloppy with this part. Again, any mistakes you make can get fixed when you apply the other colors. Alright, so I finished up the base coat of Wraithbone. It looks pretty good so far. Next, I am going to be using the model color Blue Violet for the armor pieces. It's a little too bright, so I did a little mix with Reaper Bones Ebony Flesh, and got a color that looks like this, which I like. It's a dulled down purple, but it's still different from the Xerios purple. So let's see how it looks on the actual model. I think that looks good. I think that's a good base coat. I mean, it seems to me this is screaming Leviathan. So I've got that mix of the purple and the ebony skin tone, and yeah, I think it looks great. So we're going to move on now to model color black for the hooves and claws. Model color black is very, very pigment heavy, so you don't need a whole lot, and it spreads really well. Unfortunately, because it is so dark, it kind of will eat up the detail. So I'm definitely going to have to make sure that I pay attention if I decide to wash, and I'm probably going to have to dry brush it to bring out some of those details. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to see them. Okay, so let's just say that I had some technical difficulties with my recording, but in truth, I kind of like rearranged my little studio setup about halfway through this project, and so where we left off, I put black on the hooves and the claws, and then I went ahead and put red into the little bits on the legs here, same places on the arms, and also in the eyes. Then I went in with the Pro Acryl Magenta for the tongue, highlighted the teeth with Wraithbone, and then after that took Xerios Purple, watered down a lot, and went over all the fleshy bits to try to use it as a wash. It coffee stained in a few places, which is fine. You know, we can fix that, which is going to be the next step anyway. Then I did a mix of a bunch of different paints. I don't even recall what colors I used to put some highlights on the armored bits. But I think I'm satisfied with the way they look. And then, yeah, I did the weapon. I used the same pink that I did on the other Termagant with a little bit of red and the same purples and the purple mix, and they're used on the rest of the... So that came up pretty good, and it all matches everything. So the next step is I'm going to take out the Wraithbone and water it down just a tad and do some highlighting on the fleshy bits to try and kind of like tone down some of that purple wash a little bit. So I'm just going in there, hitting some spots where, you know, I think the light is going to hit the most and try to get some of the purple out of there. You know what? I'm going to try something else instead. There you go. We're changing plans here. I think I'm going to try and dry brush it instead. So let me prep some paint. Okay, so I'm all set and ready to dry brush. I'm not going to be using any of my big dry brushes. What I've got here was an old flat-headed kind of brush that I trimmed quite a bit. It's very small and it's awesome for dry brushing into like really small bits and getting detail without making a mess of anything else. Oh, yeah, that looks much better. All right, so I've got my final turban ship broken down into parts. And what I'm going to do is try some wet blending. I am going to use pink and turquoise from Proacryl for the flesh, and then magenta from Proacryl and the Xerios purple for the armor. And we'll see how that goes. Now, wet blending is a technique that I am not at all familiar with. This will actually be my first serious attempt at it. So I'm going to start with this part. And the idea is to have turquoise up near the top of the limb and then blending down to more of a pink color as we get down towards the wrist. And I'll do that with all the others and the body as well. The closer that color is to the ridge of armor will be where the turquoise is, and then lightening down to pink. I'm going to be using a different color in here. Probably a darker purple, but I'm not worried about that right now since this is firmly going to be pinkish at the moment. I can paint right over that and then adjust it later after it all dries. So from what I've read about wet blending, you need to work fast because you need to do this while your paint is still wet. And you definitely want to try to go horizontally-ish. And then always rinse and clean your brush between each color change. Okay, well then that's not quite working. I might have to do some glazing. Okay, that's not terrible. Not bad for my first attempt. I mean, it's not perfect, but it's not terrible. And a little attempt there on that small bit of armor. But, so, yeah, look, it's, got all the armor bits done, all the fleshy bits done, and I'm happy. I think it looks great, and we're all set to move on to the hooves and the claws and the main body of the weapon. I'm excited. So I'll be using all of the same colors, but for these we're going to try some Naga Green and Arid Earth. I had to look at a color wheel to find this one because I needed to find the opposite of pink, and that came up as a kind of desaturated yellow-green. So I found that about 3 drops of green to 1 drop of arid earth seem to be the closest I can get to that color. I'll show you here on the spoon. So there's the pink, and that's the green. So that's what I'm going to use. I may put it in the eye as well. I'm not sure. We'll see. So I did wind up putting a little bit more of that arid earth into the green mix, lightened it up a little bit more, and this is the exact color that I wanted. So go nice and easy, stay in the lines, and we're gonna have a very colorful termagant, right? So we got all the green in there. The weapon actually looks pretty cool, I think. Look at that. I like it. Kind of dig it. So what I've got here is this particular termagant has a tactical rock, so to speak. And it looks like kind of an egg. So what I think I'm going to do here is I'm keeping in mind that I'm going to be basing it with dark purple, because that's going to match the termagant itself. But for the egg, I decided to do a completely different color scheme that I also think is going to work. I'm going to be using Vallejo orange red and Tamiya flat blue to get that little section painted. And you can see the colors here on the spoon. I took a look, and I think it's going to work. Get started on that right now. So starting with the orange, I always want to start with the lighter colors first, because if I go outside the lines, I can always use those darker colors to cover up the mistakes. So I'm covering this all up with the orange, then I'm going to go back over it with the blue and see how it looks. Okay, so there's our Tyrannid. I actually really, really like this color scheme, and I think I'm going to use it for other things down the road. The one thing I found that I didn't like too much about the Pro Acryl paints is that they rubbed off very easy. I mean, I love the colors. I love that matte pastel color look that I got from them. I think it's absolutely gorgeous, but it rubbed off too much. So I had to do a lot of spot fixing here and there. But I think it looks pretty good. I took the other two and this one, and I applied a little texture paint to the base. I'm going to add some rocks now from Army Painter Battlefields. Yeah, this stuff here. It's just little bits of cork, really. So I'm going to add some of these rocks, paint the bases, add some tufts, paint the edges black, spray them with a clear matte top coat, and call it done. So here we are with our 3 fancy pants painted Tyranids. I think they came out great. I really like the 2 official color schemes that I used, and I really like the kind of rainbowy, let's face it, it's the colors of the Bi flag, so there's a reason for that. Anyway, I think they came out good. I really like them, and I hope you enjoyed watching this video. Please like, share, and subscribe for more content. Have a great day, everyone. We'll see you around.